the Only Male Cruise Show, the podcast. I am the Only Male Cruise. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Let's go to work. Welcome to the Only Male Cruise Show, the podcast. I am the Only Male Cruise. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment. You know I want to hear from you. Today, the title of this episode is Reparations. What is HR40? Now, one of President Biden's recent nominees to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors has repeatedly called for Black Americans to receive reparations for years of economic discrimination and slavery. And according to a report on Monday, Biden announced the nomination of Lisa Cook, who is a Michigan State University economics professor. Now, if confirmed, Cook will be the first Black woman to be part of the 7-person board. According to Cook, everyone has benefited from slavery, everyone. And Cook also states that she thinks that we absolutely need some sort of reckoning with that. There are many proposals on the table to study the possibility of reparations, many economic proposals being put forward, and she thinks they should all be taken seriously. Now, Biden said during his 2020 campaign that he backs the study of paying reparations and also voiced support for a House bill that would create a panel to consider the matter, as well as the effects discriminatory policies have had upon generations of former slaves and their descendants. According to Lisa, one thing I do support is HR40, which would put in place a commission to study this. I think it's absolutely necessary, absolutely what needs to be done. It's difficult not to comment on a particular plan because there would be many different plans to achieve the kinds of reparations that two of the authors are suggesting. Now, critics of reparations argue there is no mechanism for fairly distributing payments. They also claim the compensation isn't needed because of advances in racial equality over recent decades. Now, that remains to be seen. I doubt that very seriously. But my guest today is Samantha from Black Political Swingers. She's here to share a brief overview on exactly what HR40 is, as well as bring awareness to some current candidates who are running for political office who also support reparations. So with that being said, I want to thank you, Samantha, for joining. And how are you today?
Hey, how are you, Mel? I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You. So with HR reparations or the HR40 bill, I personally do not know a lot about it. I've heard conversations. I've listened to a hearing that they had, I think it was a couple weeks ago. It was live. Um, One of the things that really struck my or got my attention was that Lisa Cook is a Black woman. I know she has a PhD in economics, um, a very impressive record. And of course, a lot of people are critical of her even being nominated to this position. I think I heard some critics say that she's more qualified to coach an NBA team, um, more qualified to do that than be on this board of governors for the Federal Reserve. Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah, Black women, we always have to get the the short end of the stick and the most ugliest depiction of our skills and abilities. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So can you what is HR40 and what does the HR stand for?
So HR stands for the House of Representatives, and the number is just is 40, because that's just the what do you call it? Like the order it came in.
Hmm.
So it was a bill that was established. It actually was established back in the 90s, originally by Congressman Conyers, and then it sat in Congress unsigned with no sponsors for probably about 30 years.
Oh wow.
And then with the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Slaves movement with Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, the bill began to get more, I guess you would say, more attention. A lot of us had never heard of HR40 before the ADOS movement started a few years ago. And so it kind of got into the spotlight. And the first thing we noticed was that a lot of the Black Congressional Black Caucus members had not even sponsored it, had not signed onto the bill. And so that was the first problem was, why would you say you're for Black people, but not sign this reparations bill that's been sitting in Congress for 30 years? And so once we put them on the spot, the CBC, and then you had, of course, Kamala Harris at the time, who was running for president I think it was in the 2020 election. She ended up dropping out, but she was when she was in the primary, she was, we just had a lot of people starting to pander and say, yeah, I'm going to sign the HR40 bill. I'm for reparations for Black people, because they knew the Democrats needed our vote to win. And of course, like, once she gets in, you hear nothing else about it. But the HR40 bill in and of itself is, to me, is problematic off top, just because it's only like a study. And I feel like I would love to say a study is okay, but knowing how our government is, they're extremely racist. I feel like they are using it more as a like, it's kind of like symbolism, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So you get to say, I support reparations for you guys, by us pushing this legislation, but that legislation in and of itself does not actually give us reparations. It's just a study.
Right.
Or they're creating and I think it's like a commission they're putting together to study the reparations for us. And I'm just like, it's been about 5 centuries since this atrocity to our ancestors occurred. It was in about the 1600s. And now here we are, and it's not even over. We went from the slavery, of course, to Jim Crow, the redlining, the Reconstruction era that really did not reconstruct us. We were freed and emancipated, but then, we basically ended up right back on the plantations that we were freed from, because there was no jobs for us. And so we ended up doing the sharecropping, and, it was one thing after another. And so we're long overdue
Mm-hmm.
for this debt that's owed. And so to me, a lot of people in our community are just not happy with them just coming up with this study, even though I do think it's needed if you want it to be done correctly. But I feel like we need to definitely give them a time limit, like 18 months or something.
Sure.
And go ahead.
Well, this has been in play for, like, how long has this been in play? Because my understanding is that the study, when I listened to, I guess, a public forum meeting they had where people were allowed to, due to COVID, they came in through Zoom or what have you, but they were allowed to, I think they were given like 3 minutes to speak their opinion on whether they thought it was reasonable to have and why they should have it and why they shouldn't have it. But how long has the study been in effect at this point?
So that's actually what the bill is for. And the bill has not even been passed. So it has to go from the House of Representatives to the Senate, and then the president has to sign off on it. So the study actually hasn't even started. They're actually just trying to get um, it passed through the House, which it hasn't even been passed through the House yet, to my knowledge. I know people have signed on it, but I don't think it's actually been passed.
Okay.
And it's because it's not in the Senate at all. And so Cory Booker, Congressman Booker, he actually, Senator Cory Booker, I'm sorry, he actually created the S40. So that's the what do you call it? It's kind of like the complementary bill in the Senate for the HR40 bill. So it's a Senate version. So he is pushing that. But again, that only was there when they were running for, he was running for the presidency in the 2020 election. And once more, it's another bill that's just kind of like sitting there collecting dust.
Sure.
Now that, that election is over with, we haven't heard anything about it.
Right.
So it still has to go through the process to just be passed before they can even study it. And I think that's what is so frustrating to a lot of people who do know the history of the HR40 bill, is we're just getting impatient, and people are just feeling like, it took 30 years just for, the CBC, who claims they're for Black people, to
Mhm.
sign off on this bill. And then now that you finally signed off on it, again, it's just sitting there. Like,
Right,
they're passing bills for Native Americans, trying to
right.
give money to illegal immigrants. They're just
Yeah,
having time to do all these other things, and HR40 is just being overlooked. And then the fact that it's not even doing anything but just creating commission to study,
right.
that's just, problematic.
So how long will that take? So I did also find that, I guess it's Representative Tom McCormick from California, Republican. One of his critical remarks is, "I can't imagine a more divisive, polarizing, or unjust measure than one that would be by government force, require people who never owned slaves to pay reparations to those who never were slaves based on not on anything that they'd done, but only because of what race they were born." And that seems to be like the overwhelming sentiment of reparations, no matter who you're speaking to. And it looks like that's what's behind the lack of movement on this HR40.
Well, that's like that, that's just white supremacist talking points. I think is this McCormick or McClintock?
McClintock, thank you. Yes,
Okay,
McClintock.
I was trying to look. I was like, I'm looking for it, couldn't find him, McCormick.
Sure.
But that's a lot of the white men, especially in like the Republicans, because he probably is a Republican. But a lot of the Republicans and a lot of the Senate are saying those things, and of course they're going to say those things to create some reason. They don't want to just flat out say we don't want to give Black people money that they have, uh, earned already, because we've already done the work by building the entire country. But they don't want to say that. So they'll say, oh, it's going to be divisive. How, and again, I'm like, we're already an extremely divided country right now. It's like extremely racist,
Mhm.
very divided. We saw what happened on January 6th of last year with guys trying, people trying to overtake the Capitol, and overthrow our government. It can't get any more divided than that, personally. So, that rhetoric is kind of just disconcerting, because it's like we're not trying to get reparations to make white people feel good. It has nothing to do with them. It's about a debt owed. You enjoyed the labor of my ancestors, the torture, the murdering, pillaging, stealing land, burning down our communities, etc. And someone has to be held accountable. So it's like, not only is it a debt owed because of work that was labor that was being done, but
Right,
also just the pain and suffering that's
right.
occurred over the centuries to our people, that's extremely had an extremely detrimental effect on our communities. So um yeah, when I hear stuff like that, I just think, it's kind of reminds me of CRT, where the parents are saying, "Oh, I don't want my kid to feel bad for being white." But
Right.
it's not about your feelings. These are just it's just the right thing to do.
Absolutely. So to your knowledge, Samantha, what are some of the details in this HR40? Like, what is it asking for as far as the study? What direction are they going in? Do you have some details about that?
Yes, so I'm a true believer of not reinventing the wheel. So I actually follow Dr. Sandy Darity. He started out with the ADOS. I mean, he's been actually doing the research for decades, probably like since the 80s or 90s. He's a Duke professor in North Carolina, and he's an economist. And I'm like, who better to do the work than an economist?
Absolutely.
So he's been studying, the repercussions, and just the way that our tribe, we call ourselves descendants of chattel slavery, freedmen. Some people will call themselves ADOS, but it's still the same, the same descendants of chattel slavery, the same people. And he's been studying just the after effects of how slavery, redlining, etc., has um, completely just the effect it's had on our community from an economic perspective. And so, people, you'll see a lot of articles where they're discussed constantly about the racial wealth gap and how do we close it. They just try to, a lot of, white people, they'll write these articles and they'll act like they just don't know the answers. And it's like, if you make someone work for 4 centuries and don't pay them, that's why it's there. And so it's
Right.
like the only way to fix this is to pay us. There is no other way. There are no programs that's going to close it. There are no amount of credits or scholarships or whatever that's going to close it. We need hard earned cash. We need the land that you took away. We want it back. We want you to put legislation in so we don't have mass incarceration and things that are going to systematically continue to hurt us even after we get the money. So Dr. Sandy Darity, he actually wrote a book. I wish I can remember the woman's name. Actually, I have it, the Audible, but he wrote it. He co-authored it with another. I want to say she's another scholar that works with him, and it's called From Here to Equality. And in that book, he outlines um, like what happened to us in the past, and then how we're going to move forward from there to make us have the equality that we deserve as American citizens in this country. And so he has done several interviews, and he does discuss why he thinks HR40 is extremely just not quite right
Mhm.
as it sits today because of the wording in the legislation. One thing about the HR40 bill is it does include, it has like verbiage that will include minorities and people of color, like other groups essentially. So
Mm,
that's like the first problem. And then we also found that through him studying it, that there's in Cobra, which is their name is National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and then you also have the National African American Reparations Commission, which is NARC,
mm,
and they pretty much have like set things up so that they will be getting kickbacks
right.
from
I've seen
this
that.
commission. Yeah, so that was, we probably wouldn't be as bothered by it if we actually thought they were doing the work, but they have been aware of this bill. They've been quote unquote doing reparations work for 30 something years, but literally like no one knows who they are.
Right.
And when you go down that rabbit hole to study their history, their background, it's
Mhm.
just a lot of sleaze. I don't know what the word is, but just a lot of corruption. It's a lot of
Sure.
corruption. There's a lot of co-opting of the entire, just kind of like the NAACP. Just a lot of co-opting of that entire organization. And so it's at the point now where it's like, are you working for the people, or do you have like corporate
Right.
interests going on here? So that's
Pay
again
paying
just
off.
very worrisome.
Right. So I did find the title of that book, From Here to Equality. Looks like that's from Kristen or A. Kristen Mullen and
Yeah,
William.
that's her name, A. Kristen Mullen, correct.
Okay. So what specifically in this HR 40 are they saying? Like, have they indicated, all right, every qualified individual will get, $100, $100 million? What are they projecting, or what are they proposing as far as the amount of money that each person who qualifies under the criteria, what amount are they saying that we should receive?
Well, that's the thing, because it's a study, they don't have amounts in there yet. It's just they're just setting up a commission to study.
Wow.
So that's what we are focusing on, is who's on that commission, right?
Right.
Like we want the right people in that room. And then secondly, who are you setting this commission up for? Like, who are you writing this legislation for? Is it going to be for descendants of chattel slavery, or is it going to be for descendants of chattel slavery, Native Americans, and people of color?
Mhm.
So those are the types of things that we're kind of looking at right now. It actually doesn't even we're not even at the point yet where it has a number
So
to
it
pay,
doesn't.
because
Yeah.
the commission is going to do that. Once the commission has been formed, then they have to study the effects of systematic racism, and the ways that they've held Black people back over the centuries on top of slavery, etc. They
Mm.
have to look at those impacts and see. Then they'll discover, okay, this is how much money we're proposing that we should be paying you. And of
Right.
course, Dr. Sandy Darity, him being an economist, grateful for someone like him and Kristen Mullen, who have done that work already. They already have the number, so we would know if the government will come to us with this lowball number and be like $800,000 or whatever. We know that it's in the trillions. And
Right.
we know that it's going to have to be paid over a period of time. It's not going to just, unless they want to just write a huge sum of money at one time, it's probably going to be occurring over, I know for Yvette Carnell, she said at least like a decade, or if not longer. So
Mhm.
it just depends on how the payments are sent out.
So, based on the way you're describing this HR 40, which is, I interpret it as toothless at this
I'm
point.
sorry. Mel, it's kind of like scratchy.
Oh, is this any
And
better?
then it's like
Is
the
this
Matrix, kind of like it feels like the
okay?
Matrix a little bit.
All right. Is this any better?
No, it still sounds the same.
All right. Hold on. Hold on. Just a moment. Okay. Is this any better?
That is much better.
Awesome. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Not today, devil. You're not gonna stop this
I
today.
know they're trying to stop us. We getting whenever
Absolutely.
we're doing this real work,
Yeah.
here comes
So,
something. The devil trying to
ain't,
break
ain't
it, cut it down.
indeed. So
Right.
my question was, so if HR40 is stalled and just collecting dust, can
Hmm.
another state or another body of government from a different state, can they write a reparations bill, or can they kind of circumvent the stalling that's going on here? Is there an alternative to get some energy behind the effort for reparations?
So, to my knowledge, there are a lot of reparations bills occurring across the country right now. The most notable one is the one in California that Governor Newsom has recently signed, and that's under the work of Friday Jones. Her organization is called NAASD dash LA. That's the branch there, and they actually have chapters across the nation. But they're doing great work, and their goal, they did do some work with Antonio Moore, who is one of the co-founders of ADOS, and because he's actually based out of California too,
Okay.
and they have a whole task force along with the state DOJ working on this initiative, which is really impressive. So they basically have already passed like a bill to study what the impacts are to the people, the citizens of California, this based on the state of California and the economic, issues that they have and what's been causing the racism, what has caused those economic issues. And so their goal is right now they're actually doing what the HR40 bill would be doing at the federal level. They're doing it at the state level. They're studying. So they have 18 months to do this study to see, what needs to be done to repair, which is why it's called reparations,
Sure.
to repair the descendants of chattel slavery in that state. And just the harms that's been done, such as I know you've probably heard of Bruce's Beach being returned to their family,
Yes.
um, which was really great. So they're doing such great things, and the wonderful thing about it, because we do have other bills in other states, but they're the only ones that I feel are actually creating a study for true reparations. It's not programs, it's not baby bonds or whatever. It's
Exactly.
like the real deal. We're going to give you your land back. We're going to pay you, money that you guys have earned over the centuries of labor in this state, and so on and so forth. So that's why I highlight them, because New York has a reparations bill that I've heard about. I think
Yeah.
the state of Georgia has some type of reparations bill that they're either pushing, and a lot of them are not, either have passed it and it's not a true reparations bill, or they're just in talks about it.
Right.
And so the goal with California's reparations bill, like that's why all eyes are really on them right now, because whatever they're doing, they're pretty much setting the stage for what needs to happen at the federal level. And because it's California, is such a big state that is going to have whatever happens there has a huge influence that reverberates across the entire country. So everyone's like eyes are on California and what they're going to come up with once that study is done. And so that's their goal, is to pretty much have that impact to force the federal government to do their jobs. It's kind of like, to compare it, it's kind of like the, legalizing marijuana.
Right.
It started at state level, and if enough states sign off and say, yeah, it's legal here, it's legal here, it's legal here, then at some point everyone's going to be looking at the federal government like, okay, it's literally legal in every state. How are
Right.
you still making it an illegal thing? Now you have to legalize it. And so that's basically like one way that we're putting the pressure on the federal government, is that way. And then another way we can segue into, I'm sorry, one second. But that's why we are getting more politically involved, which I love seeing, because a lot of us really did not grow up in a political household or have like this big political background.
Right.
But our descendants of chattel slavery, our people, we're basically educating ourselves more on how to be politically literate, how to vote more strategically for policy and not party, like the
Right.
vote blue no matter who. Is like, no, 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 that's ignorant. So we're kind of like educating ourselves. And we do have Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore to thank for that, because and Yvette Carnell actually has a major, she's a political science major, and Antonio Moore is an attorney out of the state of California. They're very, very intelligent people, and they are part of our tribe, just since the child of slavery. So we're just blessed that we know their hearts and are in the right place because they're fighting for us and they are us, and they have educated us. So a lot of people took what they learned from them and they just took off and ran with it. So we're probably running in different directions, but we're essentially all working towards
The same.
reparations. And so at Black Political Swingers, we actually, our focus and goals are to not only educate people politically, our tribe specifically, but also to put reparationist candidates in office so that they can push the bill through Congress. Because one thing I noticed, I created this organization because I noticed that when people are fighting for legislation to be passed um, in Congress in DC, there's never anyone that's in the room fighting for us specifically. All of
Right.
CBC, you have people who are from different countries, which is nothing wrong with that, but maybe they should have, because there's actually caucuses that are specifically for the Caribbean and other ethnicities. So I don't think you should really just put yourself under flat blackness and say, I'm the CBC. And then there really is no caucus just for freedmen, just for descendants of chattel slavery. And even the people who are a freedmen or from that lineage, they're not even fighting for us, like a Clyburn, for example. So we have like Marcel Dixon is actually running against Jim Clyburn because we want to replace him. We want to put one of our reparationist candidates in his seat because he's been sitting there for 30 years doing absolutely nothing for our people specifically. And so this is our response. This is our anger that we're pushing back and saying, not only are we going to use our voice through our vote, but we're literally going to send our specific candidates to Washington to unseat you and do the work that you'd never could bring yourself to do
Have
because
no
you're
inclination of
being
doing.
beholden to corporate interests.
Right. But now I do want to back up because I do want you to kind of give a just a overview of the candidates that Black Political Swingers is behind and is galvanizing. Um, but here's my question: back to this HR40. So it has been said for the longest that anything that happens in California, if the law passes in Cali, then we can expect that it's going to be a nationwide law at some point. And I do know, and the reason why I know this in particular is because I used to live in Evanston, Illinois. And so I know that they passed something there in the city that they're calling reparations, which is really a half-hearted attempt. I thought I heard somebody make a comment at the hearing that they had, um, that the way they have that structured, the people who would be eligible for it still don't qualify for it because that now it's something to do with we're going to get you some type of a discount, for lack of a better term, to be able to purchase a home, but they don't even have the income in order to qualify for the home or what have you. So if different states, because you mentioned something's going on in Georgia, if different states do enact some form of reparations, should everybody just move to those states where it's enacted, or should people just stand fast and wait until it becomes something federal, a federal law?
So I'm glad you asked that. I don't think people should just move to those states, one, because I think they're going to go based on possibly lineage, like who was here in this state that was impacted. So I feel they might try that. I don't want people to just move and assume that they're going to get a check because that may not even happen. And then second of all, like you just said, it's not even true. We call it either true reparations or pure reparations. So why even bother to move to the state just to get a credit for a house or something that you may not even qualify for?
Right.
So we are saying stay put, but actually a lot of us are talking about a reverse migration or returning back to the South if we're going to move anywhere, just to have a stronger hold on our political power
Hmm.
as to who's going to be in office from local, state, and national levels, to
Right.
make sure that whatever we're going to do is going to actually really be effective, because the people that we're putting in office is going to make sure we have true pure reparations pushed
Right.
through this legislation.
And representation. Okay. Well, I mean, thank you. You've really put some clarity on this HR40, at least for me, and hopefully for our
You're
listeners.
welcome.
So back to the what is it? Political or Black Political Swingers. That's your organization. And let's talk about the candidates that you are profiling on there and exactly what it is you're doing with them.
So, Black Political Swingers was created kind of like a lot of things in this movement out of anger and frustration.
Wow.
So, I originally created it because I was tired of Black people feeling like they cannot vote for any other party except Democrats. And we know that the Democrats, literally, we've been voting religiously for that party at, a very high percentage rate for at least probably about 7 decades, 6 or 7 decades. And they just don't have that track record of doing anything for our people. So for Black, descendants of chattel slavery tribe. So I decided, I like this year I'm a Republican, and I was trying to talk to some of our people in different rooms, like on Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, about, why don't we vote Republican, just as a protest vote, to show Democrats we're not playing around with you. We've been voting for you all this time, and if you don't give us what we want as far as reparations, if you don't get this legislation pushed through and passed and signed, we're voting for the other party, and we're going to put them in the White House and put them in Congress. And yeah, and actually, the interesting thing, a lot of people don't know, but the Republicans have actually been more receptive to listening to us when we talk about reparations than the Democrats. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't even know that. And so Black Political Swingers was born out of that, just wanting to open my people's eyes to learn to feel comfortable voting red or voting for Republican Party, because a lot of people don't know that we also actually used to be the Republican
Right.
Party. Like when we first really got into politics, we
Exactly.
were the Republicans, and then I'm not sure how we kind of switched over to Democrats. Some people said we were ran out of that party through KKK. I did some research, and there's just different stories of how we became blue or became Democrats. But either way, my thing is, I don't know why we're being loyal to one party,
Right.
because they are one and the same to us, and we know that. So you need to play them off each other. You need to be more strategic and vote for whomever has the policy that you want, not just I'm just with this party, because America's never been loyal to Black people. So why are we being loyal to them? And so that was the first thing. And then once I created it, I met Tamara Johnson Shealy. She's actually running for office, the US Senate in the state of Georgia. And she asked me to work with her on her campaign for phone banking. And then through the meeting that I had with her, Marcel Dixon was there, and so was another woman who was representing him. So then we kind of got together and started, like, she started working with me kind of like as a partner, but she has like her own organization. Her name's Sisterella, and so she was representing Marcel. And then from there, Marcel told us, hey, there's like other reparations that are actually running right now. We're like, really? And we didn't, we just kept, it just kind of happened very quickly over the last several months. And so that's how we found out about Reverend William Somerville out of the state of California running for the US Congress as in the House of Representatives. And then we found out about Brandon Dean, who is running in the state of Alabama for the US Senate as well. And then from there, somehow we found out there's a mayor running in Augusta, Georgia, and his name is Christopher Leggett. And he's a reparationist, like a hardcore. So we actually vetted all these people,
Awesome.
and so that's what we became. We became, we vet people, we ask them the questions, make sure they really are for true reparations for our
Yeah.
people. So somebody can come back and basically say, yes, we vouch for these people. This is what they're really about.
Awesome.
And then I'm sorry, were you saying something?
No, I was saying awesome. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, and then we offer them whatever they need, whatever resources they need, because we want to get them in office. So if they need phone banking, we offer that service. If they need digital marketing, we offer that service. Ground teams, we put ground teams together for them, like whatever they're needing, because we know we're working usually without corporate PAC money.
Right.
So it's a grassroots movement. So that's basically how we came to be. It was like basically a void, something that needed to be filled, and we just filled it. We were just there to fill it because no one else was doing it. And we were just like, whatever you need, we're going to make it happen because we want to see you guys in Washington. And so that's where we are. We promote them, our candidates. We provide them with different services that they may not be able to get otherwise, because of budget reasons, etc. And so that's pretty much how we are. We find volunteers for them to, do the phone banking, passing out flyers, etc. And so we're pretty much like a one-stop shop just to make sure running campaigns for, and we're also political strategists as well. We have political strategists on our team. So we also work with them on helping to form their strategies and what best works for their campaign. But we do this specifically only for reparationist candidates. And there's other companies out there that do things like this, but they'll be for like the LGBTQ or for minorities, etc. And we're just tired of not being represented intentionally, So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I want to thank you, Samantha, for taking just a little bit of time out of your day today and spending it with me, and just kind of sharing, helping us, putting me on game as it relates to the particulars about this HR40, and then just that overview on reparations. So I do want to thank you again. Your website is www.blackpoliticalswingers.com. I did go to the website. It's a nice website, a lot of information on there. So, and there also looks like there's a contact page on there so that people, if they have questions or what have you, they can reach out. Um, I thank you very much for pulling up. I appreciate it greatly.
You are
Um,
welcome. I really enjoyed this interview, Mel. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So that's the podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I want to hear from you. And until next time, we will see you when we see you. Welcome to the Only Male Cruise Show, the podcast. I am the Only Male Cruise. Be sure to hit the like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I want to hear from you. Copyright disclaimer regarding fair use is in full effect. The views and opinions expressed in this show, you guessed it, they're all mine. Let's go to work.